Peace family, so I'm back with another one. Today what I want to do is I wanted to talk to my chosen ones about how the enemy does not have selective hearing. This is how they choose to communicate. This is how they choose to communicate. So I particularly get to a deeper understanding of this, even though I already knew, but it's always being test run, you know, because you don't know if something is outdated and it needs to be updated. I look at this shit right here like computer programming, right? But it's been a very clear situation where I allowed somebody in my space, right? And we always had this kind of weird communication thing, which I know when people are not communicating healthy, which side of the team they on, right? So it's a witchy witch that say they really don't want to be a witchy witch and they want to work harder at not being a witchy witch, right? So for me, when I would communicate with them, this thing was, and I've had this with other beings as well, it's just as far as communicating outward, they don't know whether to respond to a statement or to answer a fucking question. How do you communicate with somebody and you don't know if you should respond to a statement or answer a question? To me, when I'm communicating with somebody, I automatically am responsive. So even if it's a statement that either I agree or don't agree with, or it doesn't really have anything to do with me agreeing or not, they was just making a statement, like I went to the store, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just a statement. I'd be like, oh, okay, you know what I'm saying? I would say something in response to show this being that I'm listening. The enemy does not do that. They do not do that. That's why even growing up, you would always hear people have selective hearing or selective listening. We always been at war, so this always been an oppositional thing that we've been dealing with people who choose to communicate with you in the unhealthiest manner possible. And what makes it even more clear is that I allowed this being in my space around my daughter, and it kept happening. It happened several times of them not responding either to a question or a statement, or me just talking out loud to myself to see if I would get some damn response. But they just usually sit there with this dumbass stupid look on their face and they just don't respond. But I realized this being was super responsive to my 6-year-old daughter. Like everything my daughter said, they had an immediate response for it. It didn't matter if it was a statement, question, whether my daughter just breathed too loud, maybe she just blinked too hard. This bitch had an answer, question, response for everything this 6-year-old had. But anytime I had something to say, a question, a statement, her excuse before that situation happened was, oh, well, I just need to process it and my processor is slower and it takes me 5 to 10 seconds. You know, they always got excuses because they pathological liars. So I already understand that. But seeing it happen in real life time where, okay, you have a 36-year-old man here that you are completely being witchy and communicating on the worst level possible. And then you have this 6-year-old who you are communicating excellent with. Excellent. When I say excellent, it's like this grown-ass being is a 6-year-old. And I already understood that, you know, like a lot of this shit, they get trapped off into these places and spaces and all this other shit. But I don't give a fuck about all that shit. I don't give a fuck about all that shit. Like, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm experiencing life. This is like something that I have to learn and intake on a higher level. And the more you do something, the more practice you get at it, the better you become. You know what I'm saying? It's not like you're just doing something to get worse at it, or you just don't keep doing something if it's fucking beating you or making you worse. Like, to me, like, I don't want to sit around and do like the Western world construction work. It's too much labor, not enough pay. But if I was doing that for my own community and my own family, I would love to do it because the value and the weight of it would mean much more to me. And the ones that know construction work know that shit is pretty physical work. You know, I done all them kind of jobs, from carpentry to bricklaying to cement to fucking selling shoes, all of that shit. So I communicated and engaged with a lot of beings on all different levels of my life and different parts of my journey. But consistently going through these processes where I'm coming across beings or dealing with beings who are clearly oppositional. You know, I don't want to sit here and try to make an excuse for it, because the way I stand is either you with the natural flow and doing things in a healthier form, a more natural form, or you're against it. So communication would go under that as well, is following the natural flow, healthy communication. I hear these birds out here communicating to each other. Don't sound like they arguing or fighting back and forth with each other. And to be honest, you hardly will ever see that out in nature. Like, it's very seldom. We see it a lot if you watch videos, because the Western world is going to monetize and put all the other shit in your face. So say you got two lions fighting, like that doesn't always happen. But if you watch Discovery Channel, they'll make it seem like that shit always happens. Like every time lions see each other, they just fucking fight. You know what I'm saying? That's not always the case. It's just the way they structured it is how they make it seem. You know what I'm saying? But there is no such thing as selective hearing. You hear all of it. Now, what you choose to intake and to say for yourself or to respond to, that's on you. But as far as making that statement, I don't lean a lot of weight on it. Because if you've shown how to communicate healthy, then what is your reasoning for continuously not doing it in a healthy manner or doing it on a 6-year-old level? You know? And it's beings that I've communicated with that's 50, 60 years old that I feel like they're about 10. I won't say 6 because they seem a little older than 6. But once you get to the 30, 40s, they feel about 6. You know, you go to the 20s, they about 4 or 5. You know, it's crazy that their consciousness, their unconsciousness, their spirit was like hindered or halted at a certain level. And honestly, you can almost tell where that force had came into place in their life or where they signed that contract, depending on how young that being is and where they're being held at place at. So if this being is communicating and acting like they're 6, then they probably signed their agreements at a very young age, because their households could have just been extremely treacherous, you know? Like, my brother, my youngest one, on my mom's side, he don't take care of his responsibilities, but he's more mature in the witchy field than us. And like, his spirit was held still at an older age than 6. He was held still, I would say, probably around 14, 15. So that's where his growth of his spirit almost like just stopped that. Because he is aware, he knows things, he knows how to fucking communicate. He just chooses to ignore certain things and respond how he does. But he doesn't carry himself or act in a demeanor or a manner of that of the other one I'm speaking of, which probably got cut off at 6. You know, it could have been older. I just used that for a reference point because her and my daughter was communicating awesomely. It was crazy. It was crazy how that worked. But then at the same time, I tell my daughter, well, actually I mentioned to her, because it had happened several times, and I had swung her by a grocery store with me. So it had happened a couple times, but after like the 7th, 8th time, I'm like, yo, I've been speaking out loud, talking to you, saying all kind of stuff to myself, talking about just blurting random shit out, and there's no response from you. But you're sitting here perfectly communicating with my daughter. My daughter just looked at her like, yeah, he don't like when people don't communicate properly with him. She told him that at 6. She told her that at 6 years old, like, he don't like that. Like, you have to be able to, my daughter even knows that, okay, you respond to people when they communicate with you. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's just a yes, huh, no, yeah, like, and that's how I know this is demonic, because it's all, I don't want to acknowledge your being. I don't want to acknowledge you as a being, so I'm going to dismiss you every chance that I can. And because of the way you walk your life, I cannot dismiss you the same way I would dismiss those other low vibrational beings. So I have to work different tactics to figure out how to dismiss you, to make you feel less of a being, that make you feel like you don't matter, or your thoughts or what you're saying does not matter. And when you go through that process and that cycle so many times, like, I ain't mad, I ain't beefing with the being or the individual at all. Like, I already knew what time it was. Like, I'm very, very, very mature and wise in this field. Like, I've been doing this long enough now that I can honestly say that. Like, spiritually, I've been like a fucking superhero in real lifetime, you know? Spiritually, I'm not talking about, hey, I can come through and pay all your goddamn bills, but I'm talking about spiritually. I have helped and healed a lot of people before I even got to this space to where I'm at within the past year, doing it this way, you know? And it's all like, it all comes with the territory and knowing what team you on in your position. The way I see it as, it's like, you know how people sign up for fraternities and sororities. I'm affiliated with the Bloods, you know, but people gangbang, we do all of these different things, right? But even when you not with your sorority, your fraternity, your gang, you still are a representation of them. You are still a representation of your fraternity or sorority or your gang, even if you're not with the group. That's how my spirit feels when I'm with my team, my spiritual team, you know what I'm saying? When I'm riding with the natural flow of life. That's how I feel. I don't... There is no colors for the spiritual war, so for me, it's just knowing what team you on, and I'm always standing on it. Just knowing that these other things that this enemy doing is always tactics. So anytime I'm in that space, I'm always figuring out, okay, what's the best way I can, you know, work my energy? How can I perfect my energy in this space? If they doing the witchy shit and they ignore me and I get annoyed with that shit, okay, how the fuck can I stop getting annoyed with that so fast, opposed from constantly being annoyed because that's a thing for me? This is how I use the enemy to work on myself. So while they think that they're doing one thing, the creator has the fucking control over everything, so I just outsource them. They're pulling me, and instead of me pulling, resisting them in certain areas, I just give with them with the rope. That tumbles them over. But when you've been doing this for a while, you know when you're supposed to let the rope go or give them a little bit more leeway so they can fall on their ass and you can yank that motherfucker back. You know what I'm saying? It's a war out here. Always and consistently and daily, you know what I'm saying? But I ain't want to run up too long. Tapping everything down below. Peace and love to the kings and queens.